relationship going with, and I would save my little card for the week before. He'd just slice it through, put a new date on it, and whatever's in there. Anyway, the new guy's kind of, he doesn't like me too much. The old guy. So I said to Michael, just have to hold space for him. So now every time we go down, he goes, make sure you hold space for him.
He was nice this week, though.
What's that?
He was nice.
He was so nice, right?
Maybe that's because you held space.
Right on the heels of my holding space. Yeah, we had a moment. It was good. I had the thing I kept promising, when she was like, why do you keep talking about this stupid card? I'm like, here it is. So anyway, sorry. So it's just a fun little thing that happens during the week. And so holding like what we talked about, what I recall addressing a lot last week, is the concept of space. Because transformation, by definition, creates space, grows in space. Transformation of one kind might be an extinguishing of a pattern of yours that you are wanting to let go of, but by definition of transformation and how the body and consciousness work together, extinguishing an old pattern is going to create more space for something else in your life that, back to fear, you have some, fear or ignorance around actually being real in your life, and actually, as I was saying with you, making this decision leads you to maybe make that decision, which leads you to make that decision, and you wouldn't have gotten to decision 3 if you hadn't made decision 1. And you couldn't possibly, maybe you wouldn't have even imagined decision 3 or decision point 3 if you hadn't taken the first step from decision 1, And so anyway, this sort of like begets like thing is really important when you hear how you communicate with yourself, like literally the voices in your head, how you talk to yourself, because it's always how you talk to other people without knowing it. And you're talking to yourself, like, at what ratio greater than to other people? 3x, 5x, 10x? The relationship we have with ourselves is way, more involved than the relationships we have with anybody else, That's why, therapy is really interesting, because you wind up, sort of laying out on the table, as it were, the couch or your relationship with yourself, which you don't really show to anybody else, unless you're doing work like this, which I think is really interesting. So the nature of speech and the nature of how we talk to ourselves and how we communicate with others is, I really believe, in our generation in the 21st century, one of the most important kind of channels of energy that we will be faced with. Because the nature of our communication tool of the 5th chakra, what we listen to and how we choose to absorb sound and energy, and what comes out of us and how is the key component of how we relate to others. And yet, once we kind of nail language down and figure it out, and those of you who know language doubly, or triply or whatever, and have these two, don't you feel sometimes like you have two different selves, like there's the Russian-speaking self and the English-speaking self, or have they merged?
They merged.
They've merged.
Well, it depends on the level of the language. Some languages which are not completely absorbed, they actually exist in their own separate.
Yeah, they exist on being separate, right. And I think it's for quite a while, if not for not the whole life, but it seems to me that you have this compartment in your brain where language lives, and let's just keep sort of stick with it, those of us who speak just one language fluently. I still think the idea of personality living inside of a body with 2 fluent languages is very much worth examining. I really believe that. Because the body is producing all these sounds that are designed to establish and nurture relationships with others. And so the point I'm making is that language talk is like super cheap because it just comes so easily once you establish it. Right? Like, backbends at some point in my life are going to become really hard because my spine just isn't going to be as live as it is now. It's not going to be able to bend into that shape. I heard through a teacher here who's attending a workshop of a quite great teacher that we both know who was a student. So this great older woman teacher that we know was like attending with this other teacher telling me the story, a workshop with somebody else. This older teacher who is like really like, really open about her experience in her classes, but very much the authority and so amazing in her yoga asanas. And yet here she was at age 50 something, 9 maybe, 5, I don't remember, she's somewhere between 55 and 60, like kind of imploring this teacher to tell her what she could do to deal with the loss of her body and the loss of feeling all of this movement and that she used to have and this flexibility and strength and whatever, that she was just like losing, really kind of in a panicked state about it. And it struck me because it's quite true about the bodies. We've been talking the last couple of weeks, this being the third, the body dies. The body does something. The body decides at some point to stop doing what it's been doing for whatever number of years that it's been doing it. Along the lines of it morphing into something else.
Yeah, I mean, do you
dying means, for real.
do you ever, exactly, because that's what I was going to say, do you ever think that the letting go of patterns, which is necessarily what you're doing your entire life, is just like constant death?
Exactly.
That's necessary in order to allow the new you to be born.
Straight up death. And that's, and again, and fear, I think of fear and death often in the same, like, I don't know, sentence isn't the right word, but
so
fear
like,
and death is almost like synonymous words.
like if you're afraid of letting go or dying,
correct,
like in the moment,
exactly,
dying into the moment to be born to the moment, or everything.
Exactly. And there's lots of really interesting thinkers who talk about being like born or reborn into the moment over and over and over again, being new every time. I think I referred in the first week to Krishnamurti. Did I or not? Was that like?
I think so.
I think I did, but Krishnamurti was a really influenced my way of thinking a lot when he talked about to think on these things is like the best, I think,